Hello, dear soul family. Welcome to the Meditation Mama podcast. I'm your host, Lyndsey, mama to 3 highly sensitive and intuitive children, and founder of the Meditation Mama Company. On this show, we talk about spirituality, parenting, motherhood, personal growth, intuition, and shifting old paradigms so that you can live your most authentic, soul-aligned life. Each month, I also release special guided meditations and channel transmissions that open your heart, expand your consciousness, and soothe your nervous system. Welcome back to the podcast. This episode is part 2 of my episode with Jaime Zajac, who is just a beautiful soul, beautiful mama, and also an intuitive channel. And so if you haven't listened to part 1, I highly recommend it. I want to preface this episode with a trigger warning. We are going to chat about Jaime's journey with pregnancy loss. And she's going to very vulnerably share what happened in her second pregnancy, all of the signs and synchronicities and communication she was getting from the soul of her unborn child as this was happening, and just how this whole process went for her, and a little bit about her grieving process afterward, which she's still very much in the integration period. This happened less than a year ago. So she's still kind of processing it. And she has this beautiful higher perspective because she is a channel. So she can really see from the soul's perspective why this happened and what different things mean. And she'll go into all of that. It's absolutely fascinating. And so if you are pregnant, please don't listen to this episode. Definitely not meant for you at this time. If you have experienced your own loss, just feel into if you're meant to hear this right now or listen to it at another time. And you can also just fast forward to around the 22-minute mark if you'd like to hear the spirit baby messages that Jaime has and some of the messages from our children's higher selves, which is the highest aspect of their soul. So that's also an option. I also just want to take a moment to honor and send love to anyone that has been affected by infant loss, whether it be a miscarriage in pregnancy later on or a young baby or young child. I want to honor you. I want to honor your family and send you so much love right now. This episode was actually recorded back in early August, and this was completely unintentional on my part, but feels so divinely guided that it is coming out, I'm realizing, right at the start of October, which is the beginning of Infant Loss Month. So again, I just want to honor you. If you or anyone in your family has been affected by infant loss, I'm just sending you so, so much love. And I hope that you receive exactly what you need. So with that being said, we will get right into part 2 of my episode with Jaime Zajac. So I want to talk about your journey with your second child and your perspective from a spiritual, intuitive perspective, because you do have this higher level perspective that a lot of people don't look at. So if you could just share kind of what happened there.
Yeah, so I feel like had this loss happened a year ago or like a year before, to the date, it was January 4th when we had to let the soul go. But I think if it happened a year before, it would have rocked me so much harder. But I mean, obviously it rocks you. But I was in such a different place than I was to be able to handle that. And although you're never able to handle it, but I guess it was like June, I was sitting by the water and I had like a whole transmission come through me. I was channeling by the water and I had that I was going to be pregnant soon. I was received a name and all of that. There, I connected with a different soul than the one that came through, and I received like their mission, how are they going to change our families' lives, and all these different things. And then around, this is like not this June, but the June before, then I had a dream where I actually haven't shared this publicly, but I had a dream where I gave birth to two different souls, but they weren't twins at the same time. And the first one was a girl. And so this soul that did come through was a girl. And I handed her off to someone before I got her name. And then the next soul came in and I received the name from that soul. And then I walked out to my family and I said, here he is. And I didn't really understand that dream at the time. But then I guess I flash forward, I got pregnant. Um, you know, it was about, we suddenly booked a trip to Hawaii. I was having a lot of water codes, like really drawn to, like with Nova, my daughter, I cold dip in the summer or in the winters. Like it's really important for me to be in the water and ocean. So I cold dip in the ocean all year round. With her, I was like so scared that she was going to be like too cold. So, your first, you have so many things that you wouldn't do with your second. But with the second, I had to be in water almost every day because I was so sick as well. I had a lot of high frequency angels around me at all times. And it was like my soul knew I had this contract. And I share this because, yes, I had a lot of human level grief. I just want to share this, that I had tons of human level grief, but I did have such a high level soul understanding. So, right before we booked a trip to Hawaii, and it was right around the time where we were going to find out, we did an early screening test and we were going to find out the sex of the baby. I thought it was the second child that came, or the third, the one that I received the name. And I was convinced it was him. Anyways, found out that it was a girl, and literally slap in the face. It was like, you're having a girl and there's some issues here. We got some genetic things pop up in a screening test. And we went to Hawaii and I was just like completely went off social media. I was like, I'm gonna like quit life. And ironically, I threw up before in the car going to the airport. Once we flew there, got to Hawaii, didn't feel a thing. I never had any morning sickness. I went on a really powerful sacred hike to a sacred spot and had a really big activation. And I was moving through so much there because it was like the spiral of everything going down. Not only that, I was dealing with a really challenging person in business. So it was like all these things were happening at once, and it had to happen at once. And then when we got back, that's when like we had to go through really extensive testing. And then I got to the place where, because I was it had been such a long process, I got to a place where right before we found out, I was just like, okay, whatever happens is part of the highest plan. I'm giving this all to you. And the soul kept showing me number combinations that she wasn't coming, that it wasn't meant for her to come to Earth. And she wasn't meant to come through in this way. And so I kept seeing signs and having that awareness. And so I just handed it all off. I said, whatever's part of the plan. And I'm not going to base miracles. I'm asking for a miracle, but I'm not going to base miracles being on a specific result. Now, keep in mind, I am a mother. So I have this miracle child who's so much joy and love. And I think that if this was my first child, I think it would be a lot different. So I am very grateful that it happened at the time. Everything lined up perfectly. But then we found out the final results, and I had a dream that same night that I would have to be going through the process that I would have to go through. And that was really hard. But I was sitting there, it was on the solstice, so the winter solstice in December. And I sat there and I was just like, thank you so much for choosing me. And I was connecting with the soul. I was like, I'm so grateful. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for it all. And I just sat there and I was just thanking the soul. And the soul was like, I was never coming to Earth. We had to complete a contract. And there's a big Lemurian connection in Hawaii that I had to go to Hawaii to close something down. They were activating my energy in a way that I'd never had before. I had wild dreams about like birthing in different realms, and the guides came through and showed me how to visualize what I would be going through, because it was like this is on a spiritual level, so this is a bit out there, but that I would essentially be birthing her into the higher realms without, I never had to give birth, but I would be birthing her into the higher realms, and she was ascending to like a new dimension essentially. And I was the portal for this to happen. And so I was sitting there on the couch, thanking them, listening to a song, and then my song clicked off and it went into a different song that I'd never heard before, wasn't on my playlist. I got up to call my sister-in-law. I looked at my phone and the name of the song was I Wanted to Leave.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Wow.
Yeah. So I was having all these wild experiences. We were having like alarms going off in our house. We were having just like the wildest synchronicities. This soul was showing me like number combinations, that this was like the only path to take, that we had to do this, like to not go any further, because it just wasn't, it was going to be harder later on if I tried, because um, they shared with me this concept called the illusion of choice. And sometimes we think we have a choice, but really the highest path is the only path. And that this soul, it just wasn't meant to come to earth. So it was really hard, but, and I, one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. And um, I never really wanted it to be my thing or my story, but it was such a life altering thing on my path, my soul's path, that changed literally everything. And I made such a huge promise to that soul that I wouldn't play small anymore, and that I would live my dream life and the life of my dreams by going through this. So it was really, really hard, but um, there's still so much that I'm gathering from that experience, so much information as to why. Um, but going through anything like that is awful. It's hard.
And it takes years to integrate things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, there's no integrating that in a month, a week, a year. I mean, there's just different levels of grief. And
Yeah.
how beautiful that she was able to give you all of these signs, and so you didn't have that lingering, like, should we give it one more month, should we try one more test, should we, because
Yeah.
it sounds like she was very clear in giving you all of these signs and synchronicities that you very
Yeah.
much would have needed,
Yeah.
but
And the
still doesn't take
doctors,
away from just
oh,
the human part of it all.
so hard. And even like
Yeah.
around her due date, I set up an altar and um, like flowers, and I just like, it was hard around that time because, you want another baby, and Nova always talks about babies, and it's just hard. And the doctors described it as like, they're like, the good news in it is like, you both, because they did such extensive testing, they were like, you're both not carriers for anything. This is literally a fluke. And it's like you've been struck by lightning, because this doesn't make any sense. You both aren't carriers. So you are, you can move forward essentially and not have to worry about this. This isn't like a thing. So yeah, it was really hard, but really the only way, because the chances of survival just were so slim. And had we gone further along in the pregnancy, it would have been a lot, I think, harder to have to give birth in that way. So everything kind of, in a way, everything lined up perfectly in that way. But to go through that human level grief, and I think I was sharing with this with you before, is that like, and I think someone who's listening to this who's maybe gone through this, because it's so much more common than I thought it was. But it's so different for the mom than the father, because you're carrying the soul. And I know that, I don't know if you feel this way, that like the dad doesn't really understand what's going on until the baby's there. And
Yeah,
like,
they don't have that connection at
yeah,
all.
yeah. And so I think for the mother, it's like, it is an isolating experience, because I don't know, firstly, no one talks about it. So you think you're the only person that this ever happens to. But the level of care that I was in, I was so grateful for. And I went through it very much alone. Like no one really knew. No one in my family knew. No parents knew. I had to. It was really. My husband's parents knew, but had to go through it alone. And it was one of those things where, luckily, we had childcare, but my daughter had to go to daycare and came home right after, and I was, had to recover for like 2 weeks. And so it's hard to go, as much as I'm so grateful that I had that example. I have a daughter, she's there, I know what it is. But it is hard to go through that with a small child, and to be a mother and to have to do all of that is, to work through that is hard, as a mother
Right.
is, like, right, like moving through our own emotional landscape and our own death and rebirth processes that we continuously go through. It's hard going through that as a mother, because we don't have the same space and time to go through those emotions as we used to, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to bury it for whatever amount of time your child is around and like deal with it in bits and pieces, which I don't know if that's, who's to say if that's better or worse. But yeah, I know I was telling you about my loved one who went through that as well. And she said the same thing. She had a daughter and she said she is like the light in the storm right now. I'm just
Oh,
so grateful to have her little light and have her distract me from
yeah,
everything. But it is hard because then you have to find other points of time to process the grief.
100%. I totally agree with that. And in many ways, I just kept saying I'm so lucky that I have that, because it happened around Christmas time, so it was like going through all this, but also like just the joy and the magic of like childhood and Christmas and all of that. But anyways, that's, yeah, also hard to help someone going through that. But being that anchor for your family member is really, or your loved one is really, so beautiful to be as well.
Yeah. Do you feel like, what do you feel like has shifted in your perspective on miscarriage and pregnancy loss and, infant loss? Do you
Mhm.
feel like this is a piece of your path? Like you're meant to help women with this in some way? Or what's your perspective now, being a
Yeah,
tiny bit further out?
it's interesting going someone saying you saying that to me, because someone also asked that to me, and I feel like there's definitely something there. The what around it isn't fully anchored in yet, but I do know that, like, when I was going through it, I was like, absolutely not. But now that I'm here, I'm like, yeah, because there is a beauty to it as well, and there's a huge level. I just have such a deep level of understanding around like soul contracts and soul level perspectives. I think there's a spiritual perspective for every scientific reason that we go through something. And that's what's really activated this like soul level understanding and perspective around different things in our lives. And ironically, I have had a couple people who have experienced loss, and um, like in client sessions, and the information that comes from those souls is just, it's so beautiful to provide that to someone. And in my case, the soul isn't coming back. They've gone off to another realm. They're never coming to earth. It was more of like a preparation in a way, and activation helped me close down cycles, but and major activation from that. But um, I do know, it's interesting because I had someone come to me twice. Once before went through this, like many years ago, and she came back after. And so they had the first soul. It was the same soul came through then, and it had left, and I got the message like that wasn't the right dad, and they had broken up. And then very recently came to me for a session, hadn't seen them in a while, and I said, oh wow, there's like your soul, the same soul is coming in right now.
Wow.
And they had lost, but I said the soul is, and just because I know some souls that are coming in right now are so like, I need to get in, like, so like, let's go, let's do this, I'm ready. And there's so many like sitting there springboarding, like ready to come to earth, and there's like this big like push and timeline shift around that. But then seeing this really because oh my god, this really advanced wise soul that has come through twice for this woman, and to alter her to find the right person, because she'd been choosing the wrong, like really not the right partners for who she is, and kind of having that a pattern with men. And this soul is the same soul that came through before, and they're just so patient and loving and guiding the soul, and to provide that for her, that like their soul's coming and they're guiding you to that person, and just the patience around it really was so beautiful. And the fact that the soul was like, I'm waiting for you, mom. And I'm just kind of popping in to alter you a little bit to find this right partner that I'm going to come through, and just to have different perspectives, because there's so many different reasons why miscarriages happen. Sometimes it is like not the right time. Sometimes the body's not ready to hold it. Sometimes the soul comes in to dip in and is a high frequency soul just to have like an earth experience without coming to earth. Or um, there's so many different reasons, and obviously it's individual as to why something happened the way it does. But to have that spiritual understanding as to why, and the impact that it makes on your life, even, we were talking about this earlier, it's like our children create such a big shift and initiate such big change in our life and activate us. But even the soul that came to me has changed my entire life, but isn't coming to earth. So they are still working with us in a different way, even if they don't come at this time, or they come back around or they don't come back around. They're still like, the activations I receive from the soul and the life altering changes that I've made since then have completely activated me in such a big way in my mission and going forward, and like choosing myself, and not I don't know, like there's just such a big push for me to get started on these projects that I've been dreaming of doing but putting on the back burner, putting myself out there in a new way. I've been going through a lot of challenging situations with like people in business, and as part of such an old soul contract within myself of like giving, 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 and not receiving, or being taken advantage of in some way. And all of that went through with this soul at the same time to like really close down that chapter. And so it's really just, it's completely changed my path. And since then, I have had a dream where a light orb came down, and it was a pink light orb, and it said this had to happen so that this could happen, and like shifted over here, and like two these like light orbs started coming through. It was really interesting. So there's all these signs that we can sometimes, when we're going through things, or even our children or pregnancy, signs are such a beautiful way for us to like ground something in and have that communication. And when we're exploring our intuition, or with the spirit babies, it's like, ask them for a sign. Um, because signs are such a beautiful way that we don't have to rely on them. I don't believe in relying on it, but it can help us really hold that faith and trust that, like, yes, what we're communicating doesn't exist, but it does exist. So we can really use signs as a way to like anchor that in and trust ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and it's so tricky. It's so tricky from the human perspective to look so high outside of yourself and to see the bigger perspective and see, like you were saying, all of these reasons, like how you were activated, how you were really pushed into your mission in like a big way, and how
Mm-hmm.
your strength and your resilience and your capacity to hold has really expanded because of that experience. And I hope that people will take away from this that there is ultimately a much bigger reason than our human brain can comprehend. And maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
even more reasons that, maybe there's something else that will come to fruition that you don't know about yet, too.
Yeah.
But there's just such a bigger divine plan being orchestrated, and it can get, it's so easy to get stuck in like the little details
Yeah.
of
It's
being human.
it's interesting because another, like, my channel got really activated even more, and mediumship really started to come online for me after that as well. I think because I went through a loss in some way, so it um, yeah, there's just so much that is coming online from that experience. And just in general, we're all being very activated right now, especially from our children who are so gifted.
Yeah, and you don't grow in the easy times. You grow in the most difficult dark times. That is always
Yeah,
the biggest growth. And
yeah.
yeah,
Walking
it's
through that fire.
exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. Thank you so much for sharing your story and just all of it. I think this is really going to help a lot of women and help women who know people who have been through this, where they can share bits and pieces of your story as well.
Thank you.
I want to shift to our last little piece here. And you've already kind of touched on this because you've basically been channeling this whole episode. But are there any messages that the spirit babies want to give us, or the divine would like to share with
Yeah.
us today?
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Okay.
Um, so one of them that came through, so there's a bit of both. There's like spirit baby, and there's also like children who are here, like souls of children, because in my sessions with mothers, it's like I get messages from their children often. And so it's like a bit of both. But one, first and foremost, actually, I want to share is that, and you already know this, but it's like, the way children are communicating are so telepathic. The ones that are coming through right now, it's very telepathic. And what I love about what you're doing, what I feel that you're doing with your meditations as well, is that sometimes when we have, our child's having a tantrum and their emotions all over the place, can we cut through and connect with their higher self or their soul and receive the telepathic transmissions? And hard to do in the moment because we can get quite activated during then, and we have to really be in that place to ground into our bodies to receive that telepathic transmission of what's coming through for that child. But one that was just like a brief little thing. But these children, they're so advanced, but they're in a child body. So a lot of them are coming through, and our little Leos for sure are here to bring through a new system. They're really big rebels, they're rebellious, but just because they're very advanced souls, they also need us to like reel it in a little bit. And um sorry, what was coming through for that? They yes, they have, they're very advanced souls with so much information, but they're still in a child's body. So they still need us to hold space for them in a way that they can't always communicate what's coming through. So we have to be able to bring in their energy in a way, and they're going to test the limits with us. They're going to test the limits in society because that's what they're here to do. They're here to create the new systems, but they're also going to test our systems. So that is one message that we have to really um, uh, step into our own internal systems and really being able to hold that space for them, because they're still going to push our limits. They're pushing our limits so that we expand. But even in moments when there's like tantrums or emotional outbursts, it's like we still have to ground in and provide that foundation for them, because they're going to try to push it with us, just like they're doing the society. So they're little leaders. They have a lot of new that they're bringing forward, but we still have to like hold that foundation for them, if that makes any sense. But there is a big sacred window opening, and they're saying that like they're just so proud of a lot of the parents for being where they are and are really excited to join the family. They're just pouring in so much love and like golden energy. They're saying don't overthink things or don't put pressure, but there is a big sacred window opening for like conception and coming forward. There's a lot of souls that are going to be coming 2025, 2026, a huge wave. But they're just saying like they're so proud of you and so proud of the parents for being where they are, and they're like really excited to join. They're really excited to be there. Um, Another form is body. They're talking a lot about the body. So prepping the body, there's a lot of releasing, more water, but preparing the body, like maybe it's a cleanse or um, like energetically preparing for the body for this soul to come through. There's a lot of information around that. Third was about like calling back your power in certain dynamics and situations. The need to shoot bigger with the dreams. Like the souls are like, okay, you have to go bigger. If I'm coming here. Even the souls that are here are like pushing for that. But it's like there is a big expansion that coexists with this baby coming in. And they're just saying like, with this soul coming through, it's like you have to shoot bigger. You're don't shoot small. You're here to shoot really big and cast like a bigger net with these souls. There's a lot of moving parts that I'm seeing, and like the jigsaw puzzle pieces coming together, and huge timeline shifts, that like huge flips I'm seeing, and having to like let go of the plan. So this is really interesting because this actually came through also in a session just the other day that this girl, it, like, was totally single and like doing not, in that realm, but like the soul was like essentially like, you need to reel it in because you need to move to a different place because I'm like guiding you to the next step. So there's a huge sort of like what felt far away is actually closer. And there's a huge timeline flip as to like when that's going to happen. So I am seeing a lot of moving parts and a lot of timeline shifts around conception. The need to, again, like reel it in, tending to the body, um, energies to, the energy is very different coming in. So we really need to like tend to our own physical body, really root into our body and tend to our own foundations and really mother the inner child. So being the mother to the mother needs to come through for our own inner child to really reel it in and bring in new structures, internal structures and internal systems. And I'm seeing a lot of like water planets, aquatic energy coming through with this. Like there's huge themes around water with these souls that are coming in.
Interesting. Water's been
Yeah.
coming up a lot for me lately,
Mm-hmm.
which we will dive into at a different time. Thank you so much for these messages. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and just, gosh, there's so many nuggets in here. I can't wait to re-listen to this episode. And I think you're just, again, going to help so many women, so many parents. Thank you for all that you are doing and all that you will do because you're doing big
Thank you.
things.
And
And
so are you.
where can people find you? How can they connect? How can they schedule like a life-changing Akashic reading with you?
Yeah, so Instagram's a great way to catch up with me, Jaime Zajac at Jaime Zajac. My website, jaimezajac.com. And I have group offerings, group events coming up, as well as my individual sessions. So those are great ways. And also my podcast, the Magnetic Soul Podcast. And you can catch my links for that on my through my Instagram.
Yes, your podcast is so good. I'm waiting for that the next episode. I
Yeah.
can't wait.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank
It's
you so
like,
much for having me.
yeah, of course, of course. All right, and we will see you next time. Okay, let me
Bye.
stop recording here. Sorry, we went way over. I should have been,
I knew
I
we
was
would.
not watching the time. I'm like, so with that being said, thank you so much for listening to the Meditation Mama podcast. Your support means the world to me. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with a loved one. Check out my meditations and all of my offerings at themeditationmama.com and sign up for my newsletter and you will receive 2 free meditations. I would also love to hear from you. So send me a message on my Instagram at _meditation mama or an email on my website. See you next time.